Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric and Tour de Fleece 2023. We are just going to dive right into the topic that is why ply. I have my rainbow yarn that I have spun, my singles, and just dropping that on the Kate. I've already started plying. I am doing a chain ply in order to keep the color intact. This was a braid of fiber that braid of merino fiber that I dyed myself. I dyed it with small color repeats, and then when I got ready to spin, I split the braid into 4 sections. Right off the bat, split it in half, and then down the center of each of the halves, I split it again, and I spun it trying to keep the color bands in order, but also by splitting it, it is making the color bands shorter, color repeats shorter than they would have been otherwise. Now I'm doing a chain ply so that I can maintain the color in the order and not get it muddy. So that's the nice thing about doing a chain ply, is you can choose how large or small you make your loop and pull through the same color in order to get a color, a solid color. You can also overlap them a little bit in order to get a transitionary color. So that is what I'm doing. It is definitely not going to be a tutorial video in any way, shape, or means today. I am in the last week of spinning. I think my brain is getting foggier every day. I am just very glad I am still able to make these vlogs, whether they're going to be shorter, or regular length is really dependent on how much the topic provides me. And I looked at the card, and I think this topic is going to not provide a great deal. It is a topic, why we ply. It is a topic. I'm going to recommend a book, and I'll show a picture of it because I don't want to stop the rhythm of my hand right now. But there is a book called The Spinner's Book of Yarn Designs. I've shown it before. I will put the information in the description box below. It is a really good resource when it comes to explaining the different ways that we make yarn and the different ways we can ply yarn. Overall, there's a really two basic reasons why we ply our yarn. The first one is for durability. 2 plies, 3 plies, 4 plies, more plies make a stronger yarn. The second reason is it makes, sorry about that, my cat is playing with a toy right below the camera and she just bumped the camera. The second reason is that it makes a more stable yarn, a more balanced yarn. A single is always going to try to move towards its, or away from a twist. It's going to react to the twist because, hold on a second. The kitty has a toy. Let me see. I have in here. Oh, wait, it's in this basket. Let's move her away from the camera. I didn't get it. I have in this basket a bunch of earbuds, as in Q-tips. And I'm trying to throw them, and instead of going, let's see, is she going to go? Is she going to follow it? Instead of going where I wanted, it keeps landing back here. Trying to get her to go play somewhere else and not bump the camera. Sorry about interruptions, right? Okay, so what I was saying, it will make a more stable yarn. When you have 2 singles and they are plied against each other, their desire to twist and bend and turn is offset by the plying twist, making a more stable construction. And the cat is back. Okay. I think we're just going to have to live with it. So, so we ply in order to have a more durable and a more stable yarn. I have talked about in my discussion about spinning for weaving that you can certainly use singles. People will knit with singles, and there can be reasons. I would imagine if you're trying to felt something, a single will felt. There's, you know, there's different reasons why you might go that way. But I really recommend if it is something that you are contemplating doing, working with singles versus applied yarn, before making a gigantic project like a sweater that, you know, yes, we'll block it into place, but before you invest that much time in the construction, I would recommend taking a look at a book like, as I said, the Spinner's Book of Yarn Design, looking up some online articles, and looking at samples other people have made. And if you still want to go down that route, then by all means do so. But sample. And I know for some people, you know, if you're really going to block and the item, maybe an unbalance where it wants to lean one way or the other won't be a big of an issue. But from what I've read, that is the biggest problem with knitting with your own, with a single, is that it's always going to try to go in the direction of the twist, and you're going to get some slanting in your final product. Whereas when it's a balanced yarn, that shouldn't happen. So durability is a little bit easier to explain. Yeah, it's the old concept that most of us, when we were in, you know, elementary school, most of us had, you know, an experiment at one time or another where you had one stick, and if it's all by itself, you can break it. And if you took two sticks and you put them together, it became harder to break. And if you had three sticks put together, it became even harder than that to break. Well, that's the same kind of concept. The more strands, the more durable your yarn can be. Which is why if you look at, if you under a microscope take apart a sewing thread, you're going to see a sewing thread, one of the thinnest yarns we use. It's not just one strand. It is multiple strands twisted together, but they're just very small and thin strands, very thin strands of fiber. And so that is, you know, that's the durability. And when you have something that is going to, especially when you have something that, like a sewing thread, which may go, a hand sewing thread, which will go in and out and in and out and in and out of a fabric over and over again. Durability is really important. It's one of the reasons why a worsted versus a woolen is more durable. The idea is trying to have more twist. Well, a very, very skinny strand that is made needs a lot of twist to hold that together. So balancing all that extra twist out by having it plied with the equal amount of twist, now all of a sudden you have a lot of twist, but it's a balanced twist. So there is my take on the science behind, and I know I'm probably doing a terrible job because I now have both cats in here playing. So there's the concept behind it. At the end of the day, you're spinning yarn for yourself. You're spinning it for your own needs. And if it works for you, then it works. But you might, I think sometimes when we take on a new project, a new skill, a new hobby, so I think sometimes we shortchange ourselves. We don't take enough time to study what it is we're doing. And That doesn't mean you have to necessarily go to a book and look what somebody else has done. If that is not how you like to learn, there's nothing wrong with experimenting. And so my recommendation, if you do not want to turn to the book and you hate making swatches, my recommendation is to do one of the things that I like to do. Make doll-sized items. So get yourself a doll, and I recommend, there are some, I would recommend baby doll size. So yes, you can make it smaller, but it's nice to have it where the fabric that you're making is similar to what you would wear yourself. It's just in a small size. So baby clothes. And there are a lot of patterns out there. I know that I really like Tin Can Knits. They have, thing I love about their flax and their flax light patterns. I love them because they do scale the entire scale from adult sizes all the way down to baby sizes. And they really talk about measurements of the individual, not just a standard small, medium, large type size. And that's really beneficial because when you are trying to understand the construction of what you're doing, when you're trying to fit, a specific person, it can be really good to see all those measurements and understand how stitch count matches up to the size. So my recommendation is to make a baby, a small newborn, a baby-sized item. Test out your theory of whether you can use a single or you want to go with a 2-ply or a 3-ply. Test it out on a baby item. Because there are dolls that you can put the baby items on, and there are babies that certainly can have the baby items on. Or you could, if you're using wool and it felt, you could make the baby item. So the neck closed, so the armholes closed, so the bottom closed after having stuffed it full of stuffing. And you can felt it and make it into a pillow or a pincushion, a large pincushion. I've seen some very large pincushions, honestly. But the point that I'm making is that if you are wanting to test out and you're not wanting to do a bunch of swatches, try doing something like a baby-sized item. It will help you see how your yarn reacts in a knitted item. If you're doing crochet, I would still recommend the same type of thing. Find something that you similar to what you want to make. Nope, down. Sorry. I think this is going to have to be a short video because they are just determined. I do not need another camera, knocked over camera video. I really don't. So, as I was saying, try testing out on baby-sized items, or something similar. So in crochet, maybe you're not wanting to do a clothing item, but you're wanting to do an afghan, and you want to see how your yarn, or the yarn that you want to spin up works in an afghan. Well, test it out on a doll-sized afghan. Do a miniature. In short, the same structure that you would do for a larger item, just do it smaller. Because you're going to see if you like it. You're going to be able to really actually look at it as in you like it. So I'm not talking about scaling your yarn down. I'm talking about just doing a small version of whatever it is that you want to make for yourself out of your hand spun, and use it as a sample and see if it works the way you want it to work. Because as much as it adds a little extra time on the front side of you constructing your project, it is going to save a lot of frustration and potentially save you from creating something that you don't like if you take the time to see how it works. So everyone talks about, on all the different vlogs, I hear them talking about sample, sample, sample. Yes, sample is good. That is to help you figure out your gauge, what needles to use. But I'm not talking about sampling in that sense. I'm talking about making small items in order to understand, in order to, the cats, in order to understand, I really should set a camera up here so that you can see the craziness that goes on behind all the time. Make a small pieces to help you understand if you like the way it looks. I know that in the machine embroidery world, you are recommended to do this all the time. The last thing, get her away from the camera again. The last thing that you want to do, I think my husband is awake, and I think one of the other cats is sitting outside of the bedroom door howling because he won't let him in. So I'm going to have to wrap up a lot earlier today. But the point is make a small, we're talking about sampling in the sense of make up a small example of what you want to make. If you're hand spinning, you're controlling the quantity of yarn. So maybe get a similar yarn to what you want to make, or fiber that you want to make, and do a test. Unless you're felting it, you can always frog it. However, with the caveat, if you are fooling your yarn because you want the yarn fooled before it goes into the project, it's going to make it grip. And yes, it can be frogged out of the project. But if the final project is something that you want to fool it, once it's been fooled, you're probably not going to rip it back very easily. So, because remember, fooling is not felting, but it is some of the properties of felting. It is making it fluff up. It's making it grip. So again, it's another reason why to do a small test. And as I was saying, in the machine embroidery world, I think that's where I got interrupted maybe by Kat. You just never take a design and stitch it out for the first time on your expensive project. You always do a test stitch. You always test to see how it's going to work, if you have the right stabilizers, if you have the right combination of design and fabric. You always test it, and you test it on a similar fabric, the same fabric that hopefully, or a similar nature to what you're planning to put it on in the end. Well, the same thing goes through the knitting and the crochet. Oftentimes, we just jump in, but there is value in sampling and understanding how your project's going to turn out. Well, with hand spinning, that value increases even more because we are creating the very yarn we're going to use. We are the beginning point, and trying to decide how this yarn is going to look in the final product, instead of seeing it as a roadblock to being able to get into the project, see it as part of the spinning process. Testing out our yarn, putting it in the conditions we want to use it, and see if we've created the yarn we want. Because here's the great thing about hand spinning. If we're dissatisfied, if we're dissatisfied with the final yarn, well, start over, tweak it, adjust it, see what adjustments we can make. And that is, again, why some really good resource material out there, these books that are talking about spinning up different types of yarn, and they do show samples. It can really help us understand what it is we're creating so that we create the thing we want for our end results. And isn't that why we spin? Is because we enjoy the process, we enjoy the motion of it, but we're trying to create a unique yarn that works for our unique needs rather than just going and picking something off a shelf and purchasing a dye. There's a lot of great yarns out there. There's a lot of great indie dyers out there. There's a lot of wonderful small mills that we can purchase from. So there's a lot of options for us when it comes to a finished yarn. We spin because we like the process and we like the control. So don't shortchange yourself in the control aspect. If you want to spin something for a project, don't be afraid. Dive in and sample. Make some samples. Try it out. And that's one of the reasons I love having the dolls around, is that it is a perfect place to sample and to try things out without doing it for myself. My body does not have the ability to do a lot of large projects every year without having it protest. So doing something small, doll size or baby size, the perfect way to test out a yarn. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up there. Everybody has settled down in the background for a moment, and I am not going to risk them remembering I'm over here. So thank you for bearing with me with my cat shaking the camera and all of the different chaos that tends to show up in these videos, especially now that we're reaching the end of the month and the end of this spin along. So I hope that you've enjoyed this unwinding with fiber and fabric. I wish you happy spinning, happy crafting, and we will see you again tomorrow. Until then, have a good day.